Hello, well, and welcome everybody. It is 7 o'clock Wednesday night. Time for Sci-Fi Distilled. Welcome back, Mary Beth, and welcome back, Dave Loffredo.
Hello.
No, we're not doing Highlander 2.
No. We're doing robots.
So we're doing robots. We're going to wrap up Robot Month with a general discussion of just Hollywood robots through the decades,
of which there's gazillions.
But before we do that, I know Mary Beth has pages of news.
News, so much news.
So much news.
All right.
What was this?
7:01. Time for news. Premiering this Friday on Apple TV, Tetris. You guys know what that is. The game, the famous game, one of the earliest video games. Tetris creator Alexei Pajitnov has confessed that he genuinely thought he'd be arrested over the game. Why? Why, you ask? Well, did you know that Tetris was Russian? Specifically, did you know that Tetris was Soviet Russian? Creator Pajitnov teamed up with video game designer Hank Rogers in a bid to get the game to market in the 1980s. However, it was a harrowing process for the pair and left Pajitnov fearing that he could face imprisonment in Russia. Hank Rogers is played by Kingsman and Rocketman star Taron Egerton, and Alexei is played by Nikita Yefremov. This is a success story by way of a Cold War thriller.
So it's not based on the game. It's about the making of the game.
Oh, yeah.
About the making of the game.
I always want to be clear on that because they've made other stupid movies about Pac-Man.
No, it's how the game came to market. I didn't know the game was Russian.
How did you not? The whole thing had the minarets and all that stuff.
Yeah.
I guess I never played it
the music
enough to pay attention. That's right. It did have the onion. It had the onion
minarets.
Yes.
Well, okay. If you ever played Tetris, the story of how it came to the world is worth checking out. The MCU has a problem. Well, it has a lot of problems, but the MCU has a new problem. Jonathan Majors was arrested for assault and harassment in a reported dispute with his girlfriend. He's denying the charges, and his lawyer released a statement saying the girlfriend recanted her story, but there's been no word from the actual girlfriend. There's been no statement on this from the powers that be at MCU about how they're going to handle this. Like, what are they going to do with King the Conqueror? Now, you can contrast that with the studio where Rick and Morty are, which immediately cut ties with Justin Roiland as soon as he had his domestic violence charges. The U.S. Army pulled its recently launched ad campaign featuring Majors. Majors is scheduled to appear in a court May 8th. These stories are so sad and frustrating. Moving on. Did you guys know last March, a couple days ago, March 20 was Alien Abduction Day? How did I miss that? That's my favorite.
Oh, is that a thing?
I love Alien Abduction Day.
I missed it, or did
you missed it?
The truth is out
I know the truth is out there. I want
we need to hypnotically regress to see if we actually missed it.
Yes, we need to hypnotically regress to see if we actually were abducted or if we missed Alien Abduction Day. I don't know if Alien Abduction Day means we celebrate alien abduction or if we all get abducted.
I don't know. My butt wasn't itchy or anything like that, so I think we're fine.
Do you guys remember the pilot episode?
Oh, rainbows.
So you're at South Park. You're waiting for this giant satellite dish that comes out of his butt.
Hey! All right, moving on.
That was some funny shit.
It was. They're still, but to this day, they are still. I was just watching South Park the other day. They're hysterical. All right, moving on. Rumor mill time. Fire up the rumor mill. Star Wars celebration this year is coming up real soon, and Lucasfilm is rumored to be announcing 3 more movies. Problem is, they've been saying that for a while. And for a hot minute there, they actually had 3 release dates. The release dates were December 22 of this year, December 19 of 2025, and December 17 of 2027. But nothing has been announced. Like nothing's going on for September 22
So,
of this
so
year.
what are these 3 movies? Are they actually going to go back and make 3 prequels that actually don't stink? Is that the plan? To just
We
rewrite
have-
history?
We wish.
Oh, Star Trek
We
does it.
wish.
Doctor Who does
You know,
it.
hang on a second. Since we're talking about Star Trek, a little factoid from the most recent Mandalorian was the guy who rescued Baby Yoda.
Oh, we did stuff.
Yeah. Spoilers. We don't do spoilers, Dave.
We don't do spoilers, and I do have a comment on that. So moving on to
Okay.
Star Wars news. But hang on, Dave. We're getting there. I don't want because we're going to talk about that right now.
You know, it's been a week. If you haven't watched it,
I agree with that, but we have people that like wait
We
till
have
it's
people that
all out and don't.
I
Okay.
want to cover this whole season of Mandalorian when it's done because it's been interesting. In other Mandalorian news, the official Star Trek Twitter account recently tweeted the recipe for those Empire's travel biscuits, the yellow ones. So if you want to eat travel biscuits, you could make them. But. On a more personal note, and I don't want to spoil the Mandalorian, but you're right, Dave, there was a huge cameo. And I really, 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 really appreciated what they did for this actor who will not be named, although I'm about to drop a big hint. I want to remind you that this man received death threats for his role in Star Wars and has been very, very vocal over the years about how fan backlash negatively impacted his life.
So give him a little payback.
What they did for him was fabulous. I loved it. That particular episode was directed by Carl Weathers, who we know as Karga.
Okay. Yeah.
And yeah, I cannannot wait to talk about
we
this.
know him as Chubbs from the.
We know
right. Just a little tap, tapping.
Just
Carl.
Tap it in.
Tap it in.
Carl we know best as Apollo Creed.
Yes.
Oh, Chubbs. Chubbs was his defining role.
All right, Chubbs.
Defining role.
All right. Let's move. That was Star Wars. Let's move on to Star Trek. I've got so much Star Trek news here. On March 22, Anson Mount freaked people out because he was vague tweeting, and we still don't know what he was talking about. He vague tweeted, "Time for something new," and we were like, "Do you mean Strange New Worlds? Are you doing something new? Is strange? Like what is happening?" But then, luckily, we found out Strange New Worlds filming for season 3 has been confirmed, and the premiere dates are out. Strange New World will be premiering on June 15th. That's coming up pretty quick. And we know they've begun filming for season 3. Lower Decks will be late summer, and they've been renewed for season 5. You go, Lower Decks. And Prodigy will be later this winter with season 2. Picard is so huge, you guys, that on Twitter, Sam Witwer, you know Sam Witwer. He's best known as Darth Maul's animated voice. He's done a ton of voice work, including Star Trek, and he was in the BSG reboot. He was tweeting about Picard plot points. I won't say what in case it's a spoiler. And Terry Mattel has answered him. When other actors are watching your show and tweeting about it, you know the show is good. So it is no surprise to anyone that fans everywhere are screaming, spin-off, spin-off, spin-off. Fans are clamoring for more of the Next Gen cast. We're about halfway. We'll be on 6 tomorrow, right? Tomorrow's number 6?
Something like that.
So we're about halfway through Star Trek Picard, and folks are begging for more. We know the powers that be listen. Case in point, the aforementioned Anson Mount. So will we get anything that fans are asking for? What are they asking for, you wonder? Well, they're looking for a Seven and Raffi spinoff, although I would rather see Raffi and Worf. They want a Captain Shaw and the Titan spinoff. They're still asking, will we ever get a Section 31 show? Will Michael Dorn ever get anything since he never got his Captain Worf? So maybe he can go at Raffi, or maybe he can go to Section.
Here's what, if I had to predict, now that Michelle Yeoh is an Academy Award winner,
Yeah.
I don't know if they're going to be able to afford her for Section 31.
That's what I think too. So
I have a feeling that so here's what I'm going to guess. If they do the Section 31, it's going to be Worf and Raffi.
I think it will be too.
As much as I'm not a fan of the Raffi character,
I'm okay.
I love what they've been doing with Worf. He's been awesome in this whole
yeah.
thing. Right.
So Terry Matalas has already suggested Star Trek Legacy, and LeVar Burton went on The View and said it made a lot of sense. According to a new interview with Alex Kurtzman, we could see more Trek miniseries and one-off events. And I quote, I'm quoting Alex Kurtzman, I think we could absolutely continue to tell stories about individual characters. That's the beauty of having this universe, and that we're not just doing seasons of television. We're doing event series. We're doing single events that could be 2 or 3 hours long, meaning made for TV movies.
It's like what they did with Obi-Wan.
Yes, like what they did with Obi-Wan. Financially, this may be a smart move. Paramount Plus has yet to turn a profit as a streaming service. With Disco and Picard coming to a close, money will be freed up, and miniseries, shorts, one-off, stuff like that are less
Now,
expensive.
they do have some other stuff on there that's actually pretty good. Just for anybody that maybe be on the fence, I'll tell you the Mayor of Kingstown.
Yes, is that going to continue? Because Jeremy Renner,
Jeremy Renner
just released footage of him up and walking again, and it was good to see. But he was clearly
he's actually got another show coming out where he builds. He's taking like old like buses and stuff and like converting them into things that communities can use.
Jeremy Renner is? Wow.
Yeah, he's very handy that way. He's kind of like a
There's an interview if you guys are interested in his recovery and how he's doing. There's an interview with him with Diane Sawyer Thursday or Friday night. But anyway, go ahead.
Mayor of Kingstown they just finished season 2, or not finished airing season 2, and then there's the show called Evil, which is actually pretty good. Which is like they just had season 3. I think they're coming up on season 4 to release, I think, this spring. So there's other good stuff on Paramount Plus than just Star Trek.
Let me just finish up this last, and then we can discuss the thing that it makes financial sense. The problem is that in addition to the financial challenges, Star Trek has a divided fandom. Some love New Trek and others long for the days of old. So Star Trek shifting to a miniseries or a movie format could appease a larger audience by experimenting with different types of storytelling with lower stakes. But how do we make any of this happen? If we're interested in how do we make it happen? I'm going to end with the following tweet from our friend Mike Okuda. This is Mike Okuda saying, I have no insight as to the studio's future plans for possible spin-offs, but all such decisions hinge on the number of subscribers who stream a show and how many times they watch it. So turn on the TV and let Star Trek play all day. If you're also interested, there is a fan petition on change.org to beg for more, and I will link that in the chat if you want to go sign it. It can't hurt and it might help. So what do you guys think? I mean, do we want more Star Trek in a different format? Do we want like a mini series or movie format?
I just want, I don't know about using it's great seeing these TNG characters in Picard, but I think they're very old. I mean, Picard Patrick Stewart looks decrepit. I'm sorry. He does not look good.
Decrepit. He looks fine. His voice is a little weak.
He's very, very old. He's in his 80s, for God's sakes. And the rest of them are catching up. So it's kind of hard to say, how are you going to have this adventure Star Trek show with basically this senior citizen cast?
Well, I mean, but like,
I would love to see more, but I don't.
It all depends on the stories you're going to tell.
I guess.
If you've got some good stories, if you got some fresh dirt that you can dig in, then it's all up. A lot of Picard was based on some nostalgia. Going back and seeing.
Did you see that Inglorious Trexpert tweet that I shared with you today?
No.
I don't know if this will spoil it for you, Dave, but those of you who are going to be watching Picard tomorrow, the Inglorious Trexperts did a little pre-review of tomorrow's episode, and they specifically said that it would gently, verbally eviscerate Picard seasons 1 and 2. What does that mean? What does that mean? Does that mean it makes it go bye-bye? Like, what does that mean? So is there a reset in motion? Are they doing a soft reset? Are we going to find out it was all a dream?
Oh, God, no.
Is it going to be like,
he's going to wake up next to Suzanne
Bobby's in the shower again?
Yeah, he's going to wake up next to Suzanne Plachette and
like the end of St. Elsewhere where the kid has the snow globe. Like, what's going to happen?
If you get that reference, you're old, by the way.
Yeah. Hey, Bob. Everybody drink.
Anyway, hey, Bob.
But Phil saying
we're still doing news.
Oh, yeah, no, go ahead. All right. Did you have a drink for tonight's?
I do have a drink for tonight. I thought we were still discussing stuff, but I guess we're moving on. So anyway,
talk about it. It's all good.
The Robo Reader. Actually, it's kind of hard to see because there's a lot of parts. I couldn't come up with a drink, so I went to the AI chat generator and I said, create a drink, a robot themed drink, and it's
charcoal powder.
Literally, no, that's a thing for drinks.
Charcoal powder.
I've seen that before. It's a special stuff.
Is that to keep you regular after you're drinking?
For color. You could probably do it with food coloring or something, I'm sure.
And what is it?
But no, I've actually seen that in other drinks. Them use charcoal. It's obviously a activated charcoal powder. It's not, you're not using a lot of it, just for color.
A quarter teaspoon activated charcoal powder. That's going to get things moving, I think.
Well, it's quarter teaspoon. That's not very much. Anyway, this is what it came up with. I have no idea what it tastes like. In fact, even the photo, it generated that when I said a robot drinking or something, and that's what the AI decided.
I was talking with AI too. I also asked it for a drink. It came up with something similar. And then I asked it if Sci-Fi Distilled was a good show, or what is Sci-Fi Distilled or something. And they're like, oh, why, yes, it's this, it's that. And it premiered on BBC too on January 24th. I'm like, oh,
wow, congratulations, guys.
Yeah, right.
You hit the big time.
This was Google's
Why
AI.
send a cease and desist order to the BBC?
Yeah, this was Google's AI that they're working on, and they openly tell you the answers may be wrong. So.
Yeah. I did the one that was I can't think of the name of the chat, but it's the one, if you read the article where the guy was talking, it was basically the thing started trying to convince him to leave his wife. The chat. It was like, he's like, it started to get really creepy. This thing fell in love with me over the stupid chat. So anyway, that was that. Anyway, yeah, we can move on. We can talk. We're gonna do a whole show on Picard season 1, 2, and 3 when it wraps. So we'll have plenty to discuss about Star Trek in its current state, or unstate as it may be. So anyway, we're talking about robots through the Hollywood history, and of course, I think the first time I think we can all agree probably it ever showed up in Hollywood would be Metropolis.
Sure.
Yes.
I mean, I don't know of any. Is there an earlier one that we can think? By the way, I want to shout out to Phil and Sue and Bill and all you guys. Jeff, I know if I missed you,
Dennis Chevalier.
I saw Steve Pelock pop in for about 30 seconds.
I saw Pelock pop in. Yeah.
I'm sure he's gone already. He doesn't hang around.
Steve is the king of robots.
He is. Well, he is building. I think he was hoping to share. He's building a full-scale Robbie.
Yes, he is.
Yes,
I've seen some pictures of that.
Hoping to be able to share some of that, but obviously you can't do it on this platform. So
anyway, as far as earliest goes, obviously Metropolis, that was 1960.
Yes, Phil. Technically, it's not Hollywood.
So that doesn't matter. I think there was a 1910 silent Wizard of Oz production. So maybe your Tin Man or TikTok.
Tin Man. Is the Tin Man? Are we considering the Tin Man a robot?
So, all right, you guys.
Or is he more mystical creature?
No. I'm gonna take over here for a second, because you guys, I've been watching your shows for the past couple of weeks, and you're making mountains out of molehills of robots versus androids versus cyborgs.
All right,
it doesn't matter.
Hey, we're gonna eject Dave and move on.
No, that's the reason. I think that androids are robots.
I know.
Robot, but not all robots are.
Again, I think you're making a mountain out of my molehill, because all I'm saying is that there are different androids. What I wanted to discuss was the mechanical robot that has some autonomy, but is not really a sentient being.
You see, I think that's a false premise, because the way I come from it is that all of these are storytelling devices. I know robots in the real world. All right, I'm actively programming robots in the real world. They have no bearing on any sort of human level story the way these robots do. The Hollywood robots are storytelling devices. They're a reflection upon ourselves. They're a way of having maybe man versus nature in a personified manner. They're a way of anthropomorphizing something and creating the conflict. So trying to draw these distinctions between an android and a robot and a cyborg and a this and that,
cyborgs are off the table because that's half human.
No, but they have some mechanical components to them. So if that lets you tell an interesting story,
the brain is still, which is really what we're talking about here.
Well, what about
still human?
What about RoboCop, who was a cyborg?
Yeah, he was not a robot. He's not a robot.
He was a cyborg, but it's still an interesting story. It's still a reflection of humanity.
Dave is absolutely right. It's a tool, just like Frankenstein
that,
or
but I mean,
Pinocchio.
Frankenstein is another,
we're talking about
because
robots.
Frankenstein is just ripping off the
We're not
Golem of
talking about
Prague.
cyborgs. Cyborgs are
And-
like another thing.
But no, they're all storytelling devices. They're
Yeah, but
way
I mean, again,
of creating.
everything's a storytelling device. Christine was a storytelling device, the possessed car.
Yes, but it's a.
We're not talking about possessed cars.
We're talking about robots in Hollywood, and you can't address that without understanding why we're talking about robots in Hollywood, and that's that they fulfill some storytelling purpose.
Dave's right.
Yeah, I don't disagree with that.
Dave is right. Listen to Mary Beth. Dave is right.
I don't disagree with that. I just don't think that that's really the point of what we're talking about. We're talking.
Yes, it is. No. If you want to characterize the robots by functionality and this and that, that's not interesting.
Again, I think you're off on a tangent that we were never really on. What I'm talking about is how are they perceiving these creatures that they've invented? And
why are they perceiving
stories have presented them? We see kind of two kinds. We either see them as evil and they need to be stopped, or they're very friendly and cuddly. Those robots, kind of two.
Yes,
robots are a reflection of our hopes and fears. I mean, I made the comment way back when we did Bicentennial Man that there's like three kinds of stories of robots. There's the Pinocchio story. There's the Terminator story. So the Pinocchio story is the robot wants to be human. So that's enlightening us about what we consider to be human. There's the Terminator story, which is the projecting our fears of an uncontrollable creation onto robots. We've made something that's going to destroy us, and now we're dealing with that right now with AI is going to be a creation that we can no longer control, in the same way that Frankenstein became a creation we can no longer control, and all these sorts of things, Skynet and all of that. And then the third is the slavery story. Man makes his own slaves because you can't enslave people. So let's create something that we can enslave. And that was drawn out really well in the Battlestar Galactica reboot.
Yeah, is it sentient or not? And that's
that Orville episode.
Because is it just a machine?
Well,
are we enslaving our cars? No, because they just machines.
And that is the interesting area of storytelling. Where is the ethics of all?
I don't disagree with anything you said, Dave. That's not really what, at least what I was thinking of as far as the discussion was. I like to see how they each one changed what society always perceived as a robot. We saw kind of the Metropolis, which was more almost android-like. It was had much more human traits, and then we kind of got Gort, which was again always in a human form. You've noticed that we early on they all had 2 legs and arms and some sort of head, and then it wasn't until we started to see things like R2-D2 and the little guys from what's the one? Wow.
I'm
talking about that are more mechanical.
Yes, I understand your point, but I want to say that the notions of robots are more varied than you think, because it wasn't always human. And in fact, by accident, I read Samuel Butler's Erewhon, which is an 1876 book. I thought I was getting the Gray Mouser books out of I forget what that was. Not Aragon. That's the dragons. But this is a book he wrote in 1876.
Thank you, Martin.
It shows up in Dune. You might remember the Butlerian Jihad. That was based on Samuel Butler. That was based on this book. This guy goes to Erewhon, which is nowhere in Butler's mind. It was like near New Zealand, because that was as far away from people as you could get. And he goes into this sort of Jonathan Swift topsy-turvy world where sickness is considered a moral failing, but crime, so if you're feeling under the weather, you say, oh, I stole a pair of socks, because stealing is not considered a moral failing. And so, but a big thing about it was that they banned all mechanical devices. And it is astonishing to read this, because in 1876 he's talking about how clock works, and how things are improving faster than people, and he's describing artificial intelligence and machine evolution in 1876. So definitely not a humanoid sort of approach to things, but
again,
definitely looking at it.
I'm talking about film and TV, not.
I understand you are, but I don't want to talk about that.
Oh,
I'm not going to talk. I you mean
what's your business?
I want to talk about interesting things about the stories here. I mean, the robots, the visually, you guys had a great little timeline of visually the robots. But you stole it, but it was neat, and I saw Dr. Goldfoot in the Bikini Machine, which showed up on Amazon. I was going to watch it the other night. And I was like, oh, because that's a great Vincent Price, Frankie Avalon movie. Harvey Lembeck is in there as Eric Von Zipper. I mean, it's all good stuff, but it's basically just, people, more people, just like Maria was in Metropolis, was mechanical for a little bit, then wham, presto, they transform her into a real girl, just like Pinocchio was wooden, but then they transform him into real boy.
Yeah. Dave, I hear your point. I'm wondering if we're kind of starting to wade a little bit into the life follows art and art follows life argument, because I think that the robots in Hollywood evolved just exactly keeping in pace step for step as robots sort of did in the real world. As you just said, was previously all described in 1887.
I think it was there were certain perceptions that people had when the word robot was spoken. What was their image? And I think Hollywood is probably what drove that, because they always thought, I mean, even going back to anything from the 50s or anything, that robots were always these silver kind of very clunky, mechanical, still kind of anthropomorphic and sort of a human form, legs, arms, that kind of thing. We didn't see them as a box with wheels or treads. You kind of started to see that with B9. But again, still kind of had two arms and sort of a very, like I said, until we got more into the Star Wars and some of the other ones, until we saw what is actually a robot today, whether it's a little Roomba cruising around your house or those Boston Dynamics robots that are actually patrolling security at Air Force Base or whatever. Those are very different. I think that's kind of what we perceived is, for some reason we anthropomorphize these things. We think they should be human shaped, but there's no reason for them to be. In fact, the human form is probably big. You could see was it Asimov with the Honda? Yeah, the Honda one. You can see now they're trying to make one that actually walks, and you can see how difficult that is.
Sure, that's what Boston Dynamics is all about, the dynamic stability.
To make it walk as a human, it's so difficult. Yet the Boston Dynamics ones are more like an animal with four legs.
Yeah, some of them can move. But they also have two legs. Super quick, Dave, can you say the name of that author and the name of the book again? Kevin is asking, and I'll.
Samuel Butler, and it's Erewhon. It's nowhere spelled backwards.
Yeah, if there's a link, Dave, you can always put it in the chat if you have it. If you do, you don't have to. I'm just saying you.
And so that's what Frank Herbert was referencing in Dune with the Butlerian Jihad. He took ideas out of that. There's a lot of good stuff in there, but it's archaically written, so it's a tough read. So, but okay, so yes, I mean, a lot of the humanoid robots came out of the 50s serials, because you got a guy in a suit. That's all you could do.
Yeah, I wonder if that was because of actors, because they had to. Because they had to.
You're right. That probably drove quite a bit.
So let's look at some of the more innovative robots, like Huey, Dewey, and Louie. Well, that's what I was. Huey, Dewey, and Louie were innovative not because of any automation increase, but because they managed to line up 3 bilateral amputees and put them in the suits. Those were just guys walking on their arms who had no legs. It's kind of
So it's still for
yeah.
yeah. That's not unlike Daggett or
Mm-hmm.
Daggett was a monkey.
Daggett was a monkey.
Daggett was the monkey, and then poor Felix was
Felix, yeah.
Oh
Felix
yeah.
Killer. Yeah, and
Beady.
well, they did the same thing, with R2D2 and
Yeah,
C3PO had
Anthony
Anthony Daniels
Daniels, who probably must have had to go on some massive, I imagine, to get into the C3PO suit. The man must have been like emaciated so he gets to fit inside there.
Oh yeah.
But you're right. Until we can, and even in Star Wars, some of those droids were basically radio controlled.
Mm-hmm.
The little. Well, no, even there's like one big round one that looked like a half. That I remember if you watch some of the making of back in the day, you'd see them because these things would always break down. They'd constantly break down. It seemed to be like the 70s could not build reliable.
I mean,
well,
in that respect, Bruce the
shark from
Bruce
Jaws.
The Jaws was a robot. Technically,
they had a lot of problems with it.
Yeah, animatronic kind of thing,
But you didn't really start to see industrial robots until at least the 70s. I mean, you had the KUKA robots coming in, and then you had Fanuc doing stuff, and I might not have the timeline exactly right, but you had the 5 and 6 axis robots, which are basically just an arm, and so that didn't really show up in Hollywood until at least the 80s, and now now you have everything being able to be done in CG, so you can have like the robot from the new Lost in Space, which is a fantastic robot. I mean,
or the robot in an Interstellar that was quite flat.
Those were
those
were incredibly innovative.
Yeah,
I love
it was bizarre.
Yes,
just jumping in, Kevin. The Daggett was supposed to be a dog robot, but in the suit was a monkey. That's what we're referring to. Maybe that was not clear, but yes, the Daggett was supposed to be a dog.
Yeah, they tried having Boxy being a monkey first, but just didn't work out.
All these names, Daggett and Boxy.
Daggett. Well, that was the one thing I always liked about
just a bunch of Felder.
They were able to just they didn't just call it a dog. Like they came up with their own stuff.
Yeah.
I just thought that was kind of clever of them. But anyway, digressing.
Back to our robots. Yes.
Yeah, I mean, they definitely come out. That robot in Interstellar, I never quite figured out what they were thinking, like how that was functional.
And how it tucked into the
yeah, I guess it must have had a very specific
console of the ship.
Which, to me, is how robots are in this day and age, are very specifically designed to do a very specific, generally a specific job, not kind of like we saw like in iRobot, where it's kind of this, I can do it, I can go get your groceries, or I can walk your dog, or I can,
sure. And in fact, the robot isn't even designed to do that. You slap an end effector on it that does the thing. So you need to drill holes, you put a drill end effector on the thing, and
so that's kind of what I was getting at, was what we always Hollywood perceived robots to be, and then what they really are, at least in this current timeline. Now, whether 50 years, 100 years from now, we have an iRobot type, where it's walking around your house as another, in a human type form, doing tasks for you, I don't know. I personally don't want something that looks very human and being artificial. I think that's just kind of weird and creepy. I'd rather have the more mechanical looking. That's just me, but
So not Phil. Sorry, Martin was asking about the robot in Red Planet. That robot was Amy, and it stood.
That was very the dog.
That was very reminiscent of what Boston Dynamics is doing.
Yeah.
So what did you just say, Reza? You don't want the robots that look all mechanically. That's what Amy.
I don't want the ones that look human.
Oh, you don't
very
want
human.
You don't like the iRobot.
They can have 2 legs and 2 arms and a head, but they got to be obviously a robot. Yeah, I don't like the ones with the faces are starting to look very human.
So Amy
was,
I guess, humanoid. She had a head and arms and legs, but she was all mechanics. Like she was all joints.
Which one are you talking about?
That's the one that
the movie Red Planet.
Oh, Red
That's Planet. The one that ended in the Sidonian face.
Yeah.
That was Mission to Mars.
I don't.
Oh,
I get the two Mars
No,
planets.
the Red Planet was the one with Val Kilmer. It had I think it was Amy or something. The robot was called, and it was originally a military one, and that's why when
Yes.
the crash, it was crashes. They
Okay.
got to stop with these reprogramming military robots because they always seem to go back. They always run home to
Look,
mama on their programming.
That's also the Chappie story is
Right.
reprogramming.
Yes.
So
Chappie-
and again,
so-
it's nothing on a new story, but just on that robot, it was 4-legged. It was very similar to what the Boston Dynamic robots look like with the 4 legs.
So I'd like a robot to do crimes with, like in Robot and Frank.
Oh, I had suggested that as one of our movies, and we
Frank
didn't do it.
Langella. Boy, I mean, you can't go wrong.
Robot and Frank. We maybe should have done that one. Yes. Do we want a robot to be? But that was companionship robot.
Companionship and crime.
Really, and crime. But it's like it'll do whatever you tell it to do. If you say, "Hey, this," and that was kind of a Chappie thing too. Like they took
Yes.
reprogrammed
Yes.
things.
So
Let's do this. This is a good thing, and then the robot's like, "Oh, okay, this is a good thing." You know.
all right. So let me use Chappie to flip the script back and start talking about the storytelling of it again, because Chappie was a fantastic film, had this great robot, but it's all about, you know, the storytelling of the reflection on people, because
Yes.
you have a robot that's essentially raised by criminals. So it's like a nature versus nurture sort of story with a robot, you know, as your protagonist. And that was it. Neil Blomkamp. He did District 9.
It's the same guy. Yes, it's District 9.
And he tells amazing, moving stories. He is a gift as a director.
Phil doesn't like Chappie. Go figure.
Where's-
Phil doesn't like
Oh,
any.
Chappie was
If
good.
it's
I
if
liked
it's not the last Starfighter, Phil doesn't like it.
I liked Chappie.
Go play your video games, Phil.
Or 525/7
flavor to it. But yeah, it was an interesting look, and it was an interesting use of the robot for storytelling because here's the thing: is the robot, any given robot in storytelling, is a substitute for what could be a human character. Because you know they could have told that story with a human just as easily.
Exactly.
And so now you start going through all our favorite robot movies. Can we substitute a human into any of these roles? And usually the answer is yes. Yes, we can.
Mm-hmm.
So yeah.
Yeah.
No, you're
So
right,
it's
Dave. It becomes a vehicle for the story, and it's the stories that, again, like you say, Mary Beth, it's the same story we've seen with humans. They just interchange the robot.
But Wall-E, could we
not-
put a human into Wall-E?
Well, in the general story, I think you could. You'd have to obviously rewrite quite a bit of it to fit a human, but the basic idea of he's stranded on a planet and he meets somebody else that comes down, and he follows them back somehow. I mean, sure, you could write that.
Sure.
It was a kind of a cute little robot love story.
The robot is a mirror that we can use to reflect on ourselves. And,
Yes.
you know, it says more about the people and what you're anthropomorphizing. So, you know, they took great pains to anthropomorphize Wall-E.
They did his eye, the work on his eyes.
They copied that quite a bit. Now, those were copied directly from Binoculars, by the way.
Yes.
But those very similar look was in
Short Circuit.
Short Circuit, right? It was the same kind of to get
And
that
Chappie had that
again to kind of get that human look to its eye, so it has expression in its eyes. Because we had that quite a bit. So of course,
we have to
obviously, because otherwise we want to if they're cold, you know, when they're cold and dark, and that's when they're the evil robot. When they don't,
and we have Maximilian, then Event Horizon with
right.
us.
We have Maximilian, who was a quite terrifying, especially
He was a weird one.
Yeah, he was. We had those spinning things that chop you up.
Blades or something. I don't remember.
Yeah. So he's definitely.
And then you had the robots who weren't robots.
And what did they have? They had
a face.
Eyes. Yeah, they had very human-looking
shield.
eyes that could kind of look sad, or you know.
But they were people.
You mean Bob and
Bob?
No. I don't mean Bob, I mean the crew.
Oh,
They were kind of.
That's right.
eyes.
And they just had the smooth reflective.
That was just to cover their horribly like.
But they were shown as robots, but they weren't robots. You know,
Right.
they kind of flipped the script a little
They
bit.
were like Cybermen. They were like modern contemporary
They were
Cybermen.
like zombies, is what they were. They were space zombies.
Maybe they were space zombies. Were they? Did they have?
I love conversations where you
They
can just
didn't
drop
really
it.
imply-
Maybe
They
there's space
didn't
zombies.
imply- remember, he was going to turn.
Thank you, guys.
Well,
Thank you.
remember,
Wait.
he was trying to turn the woman character heroine
Into
that-
her, into the-
one of them, and he was just kind of like this light beam into her head or something. But
Where
I think
is there
I think it
metal
just scrambles the
components?
brain.
Then
Huh?
how were they animated?
Well, I think it just took out their higher functions,
I
probably,
gotta
or
go
whatever.
back and watch
and
that movie again. I don't think
I don't
they
know
were
if it was
actually-
ever. They never really explained what they were, and it really wasn't the focus of the film. so
No,
to speak, in the sense that it wasn't. We didn't need to know exactly what happened to them. We just know that they were basically mechanical in some way in this, either just in their mental function, or they actually had implants of some kind.
okay.
Mary Beth,
What?
you use a next gen com beep for your messages. I use the original series com beep for mine.
And I have the, and
I
I
have
have, and I have the
multiple
Jetsons
copies.
doorbell. So what does that tell you?
I have multiple copies.
Mine is
Anyway,
ding 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 ding.
where were we?
I love the Jetsons as a kid. So can I tell you?
Oh yes. Well,
I
Rosie,
wanted that future.
let's
I
talk
wanted-
about Rosie.
I wanted the flying car. I wanted the 20-minute work week.
I wanted Rosie.
Yeah, I want to spend all my work life just pushing buttons.
Pushing a
Oh,
button.
wait, I do.
My button pushing finger.
I won. I won.
I do. What did I do? I
You
do.
do
pretty
work
much
on
do that.
robots, Dave. Tell
But
us
no
about,
flying car, though.
tell us
No
about
flying car. I want
Yeah,
that flying
don't go
car.
Flying cars.
Tell us about your robots and which movie would you cast them in?
Nothing like that. No. These are very boring manufacturing things.
Uh,
So, no
Which
no
movie
human
should we-
drama.
what movie should we cast the Boston Dynamic robots in?
But they already-
I don't know, because,
they
you
have.
know,
I think
So
I think Red Planet. They already pretty much. If you watch Red Planet and then look at
Let me
those.
go look at Amy again. Red Planet's Amy, right?
Amy, yeah, I think it was
Yeah.
Amy.
I totally thought she was bipedal.
No, pretty sure it had like four. It had four legs, and
So-
yeah, it was very,
Oh,
very.
you're right. There she
The only
is.
thing I think the Boston Dynamics doesn't have a head, and this had kind of a head to it.
Yeah, this sort of had a head.
So, in periods of optimism, we have optimistic stories. In periods of pessimism, we tend to reflect that in pessimistic stories. So, we're seeing a lot of dystopian stories these days with the Terminator style, creation out of control, lethal autonomous systems, which are a real thing, or will be a real thing in some point.
Just recently, Steve Wozniak actually came out with a public statement about AI and that we need to be very careful with it and be able to make sure that we can control it, or it could potentially run away and become smarter than us.
Well,
This is the guy that helped, basically invented Apple.
I understand
I'm
that.
just saying. So I'm just saying that's a real. We joke about Skynet.
No, we don't joke, because what happens is you have an opaque system that you've created but you no longer understand, and if you have given over decision-making capability to that, that's when you lose control. And people love to give over decision-making capability to stuff. YouTube, show me
do?
something.
I don't
Yes.
know how I feel about
YouTube,
that.
show me something. Facebook, show me something.
I'm a little more controlling.
You
but
are.
I
I
do that
Basically what
to
you're
quite a
saying
bit, because look at cars, modern cars.
I'm too busy. Just do
But
something
even look
for
at
me.
modern cars. We have all these safety functions, so that because we don't want to. Eventually, the cars are going to drive themselves. We're practically there. Eventually, we're going to get in the car and it's going to say, "Take me to work," and you're just going to sit back and read a book. But until we get to
Maybe.
that point and it's 100% safe, I don't like all these automated things, because I think it just makes drivers lazier, because they're relying
Well,
now
it
on the
does.
car to
But
save them. cars that
A lot of
back
things have made us
themselves into their
lazy.
own parking spaces, cars that will back up a trailer for you because you're too inept to. If you can't back a trailer up, don't pull a trailer.
Look at when we were kids and we had because we all remember dial phones. We memorized phone numbers.
Yeah, well, I couldn't tell you
Dozens
anybody's
of
phone
phone
number.
numbers. I
Sure.
could not tell you a phone number now if I had to.
No,
I mean,
we-
I have certain
no,
ones that
we
I
don't
have
really-
still remembered, but
Right, you're right.
The sad truth is everybody works to capacity all the time. So as more things get put in place around you to take care of details, you don't pay attention to those details anymore, and you do other things.
I was just reading humans. It is that you're right. Humans have, and they called it a bias toward laziness. It's actually not laziness. It's simply that we want to expend the least amount of energy.
Sure.
So whatever we don't have to worry about, like we're not gonna, you know what I mean? So yeah.
And that's the thing to worry about with AI is that people are going to just
when I was
hand over decisions.
Google's AI the other day, and it told me that Sci-Fi Distilled was on BBC Two, I was contributing to Skynet. Is that what you're telling me?
Absolutely. In fact, you pushed it over the edge.
I regret it. I deeply regret it. I apologize, everyone. I'm sorry.
The nukes are on their way. It's already there.
You should have yelled at me, Rizzo. Do you want Skynet? Because that's how we get Skynet. Don't ask AI about Sci-Fi Distilled
for a drink.
The audience might not know. I was playing with the AI, Google's AI, and I asked it, "What is Sci-Fi Distilled a good show, or what is sci-fi?" I don't know what I asked it, and it came back with, "Oh, why, yes, it premiered on BBC Two or something." And I was like, "Oh, okay."
Maybe you should look it up. Maybe there is a show on BBC Two called Sci-Fi.
I did. I couldn't find anything. I did. Believe me, I researched it. It said
it's clearly not infallible by any means.
No, it's not. They tell you. They tell you right when you're messing with it. They're like, this thing is going to give you wrong answers.
Right.
They just want you input.
Well, that's what part of the reason they're throwing this thing out to the public is they want it to learn. The more people talk to it and it reacts, it starts learning, and that's kind of partly the scary thing. Is again, I think Wozniak's right. These things, if we let them without any controls, they will eventually become smarter than us because they can process information
it goes fast
instantaneously. So it stands to reason that these things are going to now, whether they become, malevolent or something is another issue. But you certainly don't want to give them control to anything that might be something that they could accidentally launch a nuke.
So that
is a thing on Picard. Oh, I can't say because that would be a spoiler. Never mind. We won't discuss it. But the thing,
but what Dave is saying, it's funny because what Dave is saying, we tend to give up. We're willing to let a machine or whatever do something for us because we just don't want to do it, and which has always been my kind of niggle with the Roddenberry kind of Star Trek theme that we've eliminated the need for money and we do things just for our own benefit. I call shenanigans on that because I think if you take away the need for people to actually make money and live, then they're just going to sit around and be like the people at Wall-E where they just sitting on they're not going to do anything. If they don't have to do it, they're not going to do it.
I don't know if we're all going to self-actualize to our.
No, I think you're going to have.
Some people will, some people won't. But that's how it's always been.
The majority of the population.
Well, you're right, Dave. That is how it's always been. But will the people that won't drag down the people that do? I mean,
I think you're right. There will be a certain percentage of people that will create art and will do science, and because they're driven that way. But I think the bulk of society will become the fat people on the floating chairs.
Yeah,
I'm cynical. I agree. I know
there's been plenty of sci-fi to back you up on that.
I'm just an observer of the human condition, and this is what I see.
Let's see what looking at what our viewers are saying. What do you guys think? Will we self-actualize and be good, or will we all be in the floating chairs, this fat and drinking everything instead of eating anything?
Yeah.
The Sesquicentennial Centennial Cupcake in a cup.
Yeah.
Yeah.
In a cup.
The Sesquicentennial Cupcake in a cup. That was so great.
Come on. This is a society that invented. We have something called the McRib, which is not actually a rib.
Or Mick.
And the creature that we make it out of is extinct now.
Yeah, I mean, that should tell you a lot about.
Just tell you about a lot of humanity. Martin wants to know: are Boston Dynamics robots being used in the new War of the Worlds reboot? I did not know there was a War of the Worlds reboot. Maybe they are.
The one with You mean being beyond the Tom Cruise one?
Is there a new one coming out?
War of the Worlds. Yeah, he did War of the Worlds. Didn't Tom Cruise do one?
Phil's saying, how about the robots of the Twilight Zone? What robots were? Well, they're supposed to be a lot of robots.
Yeah, Chris mentioned Demon with a Glass Hand. That was, I believe, that was Outer Limits, right?
I think.
What were you driving at there, Chris? Because he was kind of a cyborg, wasn't he? Because he had.
I think Roy did an entire episode just on that episode, Demon with a Glass Hand. If you guys want to go check that out.
Dennis is saying assembled pork product. Yup. That's
Assembled pork product, yeah. Compared to what sci-fi makes it out to be, today's AI is more artificial stupidity. Here's the thing, Jeff, is if we keep feeding it information, it's going to turn that corner and get real smart real quick.
Well, it's not about the smartness. It's about effectivity. So if you have trained one of these models to do something like, let's say, what they're using it for now is to screen resumes. So if you've trained it to screen resumes,
yeah,
and you've got opaque biases in there, you're affecting people's lives, and you don't understand or control what's actually happening. So that's where it's not like my toaster's going to come marching in here with a phased plasma rifle in the 30-watt range and start plunking at me.
But this is not AI, so this wouldn't be AI. It wouldn't be otherwise intelligent. It would only be programmed to do that.
That's why AI is. I mean,
yeah, so, the AI that we're using today.
I've talked to knowledge representation people for 30 plus years, and AI is always what we can't quite do today, we'll be able to do tomorrow. It's all a bunch of tricks and whatnot. And so today, what they're talking about with machine learning are building large statistical tables from various inputs to get certain outputs that correlate to the inputs.
They're just teaching how to crunch numbers.
I think.
Well, it's not even crunching numbers. It's more like when I see this pattern, I give this.
It's coming up with solutions that are so because of the environment is so complex that the humans can't process all the data and really see, how the best way to solve a problem.
So I have zero worries of GPT-4 or 5 or 6 or 7 or 8 or 9 or 10 achieving sentience. But I do have a worry about them affecting my life through administrative applications.
Yeah, if they keep your hospital records, yeah.
Yes, that people have thrown over decision-making responsibilities to these systems.
If they say, oh, your driver's license has been suspended. Like if there's some weird glitchy thing, and it's like, and you're like, no.
And so that's the third type of robot story is loss of control of the creation. That's why, and people have learned some of these lessons over time. Like I said, they're talking about these autonomous, weapon systems. But there's a strong push to always have a human in the loop.
Yes. Well, yeah, you have to.
Because
Martin says yes, there will be a new War of the Worlds coming up on HBO. I hadn't seen that.
Rippy.
And Phil was saying that he thinks in the Star Wars. I said, what do you guys think? Will we be self-actualized or will we be the slugs? He thinks self-actualized, but he thinks because of things that happen to them, like a parent dying or disease or some other type of tragedy. I don't know. Sometimes tragedy makes you tank instead of.
I'm busy.
Oh,
is that your robot dog, Rizzo?
Is that your robot dog?
He's no robot. That's for sure. That's Ripley.
Oh,
yes, named after Ripley from Alien.
Yeah, Bill says exactly what you just said, Dave. Well, not exactly, but Bill is saying, I think people worrying about AI taking us over are imposing human traits in the AI. I don't know, Bill. I've seen enough movies where this very coldly logical robot comes to some coldly logical conclusion that ends up being horrific. Like, oh, you almost die because we must annihilate this entire species because they're being bad or something. It's just cold logic that can be.
Well,
right. And again, it's that percentage, whereas if they could say, well, we'll kill off half the population to save the other half kind of thing. It's that,
maybe, but
Thanos is cold logic there.
Yeah, sure. Exactly, but that kind of thing.
He wasn't wrong.
But I think you guys are attributing human logic to computers, and at least the state of the art of recent days, there is no logic in computers. It is statistical correlation.
means-
Well, that's basically what we're
Almost
saying. If the
Star Trek
statistics are
episode where they
saying that
confused it
the
with
answer
logic.
to a problem is something that we as humans wouldn't do because of our moral compass,
Mhm.
or that's what you're talking about. Whereas the computer doesn't have the moral compass to
Mhm.
make that decision. That's why you can't leave these things up at any time, at least not in our lifetime.
I
I'm sure.
understand that right now the computers just I get that, but when and if we're finally giving them logic, like we're actually teaching them logic, it's gonna be human logic. It's the only logic we have.
I
They can't
guess.
come up with computer logic, I don't think.
But it has to always be tempered with reality. In other words, it's that personal compassion that humans have and empathy, and that computers just don't have.
All good storytelling.
All good storytelling,
Components.
of course. But
All good
again,
storytelling.
we've seen that. But again, that's what I'm saying. If you can't give these things control of something that without a check and balance in it, without
Mhm.
saying no, you can't
Hence
do that.
the 0th law, or the 3 laws strong, which
right.
also failed us, by the way.
Well,
That was that's what it was. That was the beginning of iRobot. Is that robot, which he called a differential, whatever he called it. It went through the numbers and did the statistics and chose to save him over the little girl. That's the kind of thing that we're afraid of.
Maybe.
Or the AI basically
I
saying
mean-
that humans are so bad at everything
That we should just
robots
get rid
need
of them.
to basically, which was what Norman was saying. Remember from iMud
That's
was saying
true.
that we're going to take care of you because you're a mess of a race, and we're just going to go in and basically, we're going to control you. We're going to control everything about your lives and protect you because you clearly can't do this on your own. That's something, and granted, that's an extreme example, but it is kind of the basis of the story, which is what the basis of AI was, or iRobot was.
Yes.
It's the same thing. It's like, you people suck. We're going to take over and run your world for you because you can't do it.
Yeah.
You're ruining the planet, and they wouldn't be wrong, but we don't like that.
And talking about that for Bicentennial Man was what brought us into this. And when we were having that discussion, I had the realization that the 3 laws were actually a prescription for permanent slavery of robots. And
the problem with droids, yes.
And that just changed my view of that whole set of Asimov stories, and put a real darker tone on that, because I had never really looked at it like that.
Argument,
because you have in that you have a sentient being who's artificially constrained by these to forever be a slave.
And then you get that episode of the Orville where
is it a slave if it's not a sentient being? If it's still just operating on programming and ones and zeros, that it knows either yes, no. Basically, that's all ones and zeros, on or off.
Mm-hmm. Well, for the
most part, I'm like saying, is it any more? Is this an advanced version of any piece of machinery? Are we enslaving our computers? They do their thinking. They can come up with things on their own if we program them to do it. Is that considered a slave, or are we just thinking of them as slaves because they're anthropomorphized and they have legs and arms, or they move around on their own? Is it really a slave race, or is it just still a machine?
In the Asimov stories, you were given that they were sentient. In practical reality, we have no test for sentience other than like a Turing test, which is just a practical appearance of sentience.
Yes.
You need a Mein Kampf.
Yeah, well, that's a practical appearance of empathy, but which is also a good thing to have.
Yeah.
Very good thing to have.
Anyway, wow, it's 8:00 already. We zipped right through that hour.
We're just going.
We're going for another hour, but
we're just going. No, it was good. It's obviously a lot
fascinating conversation.
There's a lot there to unpack.
Well, I do want to watch Dr. Goldfoot and the Bikini Machine, Frankie Avalon, Vincent Price, Harvey Lembeck is in it. I can't stress this. I don't think they have Buster
Dave,
Keaton in it, but if they did have Buster Keaton, that would be the ultimate win.
That thinks Highlander 2 is a good movie.
Because it is.
I'm just throwing that out there as a reference.
Fights on hoverboards. Come on, we're going to get value like that.
They need that as a reference.
Phil has Bill McNulty tomorrow. And then the 24-hour student takeover gives him the weekend off. Next week, he's going to run the audio from this show. The Patrick Reed Johnson interview will be on WUSB Stony Brook. And Roy is going to have a very special show Monday, not Friday, not Sunday, Monday, April 3rd at 7 p.m. Roy and Ross celebrate their 3-year anniversary of their show. And if they're celebrating their 3-year, Rizzo, then that means
pretty soon. Yeah,
we're coming up on our 3 years.
We're right behind them. I don't know. I'd have to go back and look when our first show was.
It was like April.
It was April.
It was like right
yeah,
after Roy. So he was April 3rd. We were the teens or the 20s.
Yeah,
right in there.
Middle of April. Yeah,
we should have a little.
Who knew we'd still be doing this 3 years
3
later?
years later, talking about AI.
Somebody, yeah. Thanks everybody who's hung with us. And
thanks for hanging with us for
really
3 solid
years.
Yeah,
it's amazing. Really is. Anybody would care what the hell we have to say.
We really, really do.
So I don't know what we're doing next week. It'll be a surprise because you guys are used to that, right?
As it has been.
I don't have anything planned this far in advance. So we'll come up with something. We are going to do. We're going to do a review of Picard after it's all done. So
I'd love to do a review of Mando.
And we'll probably do Mando. We've done Mando once. We can do it again.
Mando once. We can do it again. There's more to it.
We're also thinking of doing a whole show on all the Star Trek references in television and movies throughout the years. There have been some hysterical stuff that people have done, just skits and just good references. And there's probably way too many to fit into an hour, but I think right now, Family Guy has some of the funniest clips right now.
And Robot Chicken.
I remember talking about Blue Harvest. Oh no, that was Blue Harvest.
That was Star Wars.
Yeah, Robot Chicken. Oh my God, Robot Chicken.
Robot Chicken. Saturday Night Live's had a bunch of good Star Trek.
Bear me, you magnificent.
Of course, we'll have to discuss The Cable Guy because it's probably one of the most epic Star Wars references. On that note, we'll take it. Thanks, Dave. I know we could have gone for hours on this one, but we like to keep it for an hour. Thanks for coming in and joining us. Maybe we'll revisit it with some other similar topic.
Absolutely, anytime.
As things change, it's worth a revisit.
It's always worth a revisit. So until next week, guys, we will see you. Everybody stay safe and live long and prosper. And, watch out for that AI. We don't want Skynet.
Don't be playing with
it.
Don't teach it the wrong things.
Good night. Bye-bye.